Hey, what's up, fam? Welcome back to the Two Goat Show. We're your hosts, Miriah and Steph. Steph, how you doing? I know you've been sick. Glad to hear that you're feeling better. But other than that, how you doing? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I'm better. I've definitely turned a corner, and even besides that, I'm doing all right. I mean, 49ers are 3-0, baby. It's great feeling.
Yeah, only three teams that stand undefeated just this short time into the season. It seems like in previous years, like there was more teams like after the third week. Maybe I'm just making that up, but it doesn't seem like it was so short, like down to three teams so fast like that. But the Eagles, Miami with their 70-point score, like holy smokes.
Good.
And unfortunately, the Eagles, we need them to lose, and they don't. I've been watching their games. They don't personally look as good to me as they did last season.
I agree.
But they're somehow still 3-0. So, before we get into anything, I wanted to get your thoughts. I forgot to talk with TL about this last night. So, and that's on the extension to Kyle and John. In Kyle's presser, he had mentioned that it happened, even though the news just recently came out to us. He mentioned that it happened before the season even started. So before even the 3-0 start, he said it would have happened, obviously, even if they had started 0-3. So what are your thoughts? I know that a lot of the fan base is kind of split. Some think, they didn't deserve an extension yet because they haven't won a Super Bowl. Others are good with it. Where do you stand with it?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with it. I know a lot of people do feel like, why would you give them an extension before they win a Super Bowl? But I think for Jed York, this is a vote of confidence for Kyle and John that these two guys give this 49ers team the best chance to win a Super Bowl. And maybe hopefully multiple, right? Like I truly feel like Jed York has a lot of belief in what these two guys have built, and I don't think there's much you can argue against it, right? Like they've done a lot of winning in their time here. They've been to a Super Bowl, and they've been close to getting there again. There's been other circumstances that have kind of gotten in the way of them getting there, right? But I do firmly believe that those two together do give you the best shot. So I have no problem with it. It was a little risky, right, to do it before the season though, and they could have started badly. And when would you have announced the extension then? I thought it's kind of funny, but we don't have to think about that. That's maybe reality in an alternate universe, but in ours, I mean, 49ers are 3-0, and again, I think it just solidifies Jed York's bet, right? That like these guys give them the best chance to win. And I think it's great. And also keep in mind, like, the fact that they were probably negotiating this deal in the midst of the whole Trey Lance stuff. They were getting ready to trade him and all that in the midst of like Nick Bosa's contract, coming down to the 11th hour. Still Jed York, made that gamble, and I think it's one that he feels good about. So even despite those things, I think he feels strongly about this group.
Yeah, you mentioned the Trey Lance thing. I forgot to mention that as one of the reasons why a lot of this fan base, there's people talking about after that it went down that they should be on the hot seat, all this, and yet they were, like you said, working on contract extensions at the time. So that's interesting. Also, one thing that, I was surprised by was because for the last handful of years, talks have been with John Lynch about him going back to TV, right? It's like every year recently that came up and he's like, no, like we're close. I want to finish this thing out. So I was under the impression like, okay, if they win a Super Bowl, like say this year, like he would be like, okay, well, that's what I was here for. I'm going back to TV. But obviously that's not the case. So that's good to know, that he's in it. And I have no problems with it. Of course, they're not perfect, right? Everybody makes mistakes. The draft, I know a lot of people have concerns about that, but it's hit or miss with all teams. Pay
Exactly.
attention to all teams. It's like that. Everybody's like that. You're never going to get 100% of your draft right. So like I think they do a great job. You listen to the players talk, even players that, Raheem, I was listening to a podcast, the one with him and Richard Sherman, and he's talking about how, he loved being a 49er. He loved the coaching staff. He loved everything about, San Francisco. So it's like the players love him. They obviously play hard for him. Like we're getting things out of, we see guys performing at the top peak of their levels, all these different players, 5th round picks, 7th round picks, 3rd round picks, and like they just play really hard for this whole group of coaching staff. So like I'm happy with them. I was surprised, like I said, with the extension, but it is what it is. So I know it's like already a week, removed from the Giants game. So I really want to just like break it up, not necessarily about, the Giants game, but, after 3 games completed of the season, kind of your 3 takeaways from, from the first 3 games so far.
Okay, first takeaway, I'm just gonna mention like Brock. I think, Brock has looked great in these first 3 games. And I'll say that even because like there were some slow starts. There was a slow start against, the Giants. He was getting blitzed out of his mind, but I think it was a strong finish, and it ended up being a very great game from him, all things considered, right? And I think another thing that we've seen through these first 3 games is that, Kyle Shanahan trusts Brock Purdy. I think there's an amount of trust we've seen there that we haven't seen Kyle have with any other quarterback, on the 49ers, and maybe ever, like, besides maybe Kirk Cousins, right? So I think that's a really great development for the growth and potential growth of this offense. And, I trust Brock Purdy too. So for whatever it's worth. So that's one. And I'd also say, Ronnie Bell, I think, has been great, like, to start the season. It's not often that we get a rookie wide receiver that makes this great of an impression early on. Like, it's really difficult to do on this 49ers team.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of other teams, maybe because you go in there and you're not expected to do the level of blocking that these 49ers receivers are asked to do. But we've seen Ronnie Bell pretty much just skip the doghouse altogether, and he looks like a 49ers wide receiver already. So I think that's another great development as well for this team. And I think he's going to become a contributor and get on the field one way or another at some point this year. Last week we saw him a lot because Brandon Ayuk was out. This week, who knows? I'm sure we'll talk about it. Deebo Samuel could be out, so maybe we see Ronnie Bell again. But in any case, even if both of those guys are healthy, I do think Ronnie Bell will make his way onto the field. I mean, he already has with special teams, and he made a good play. Was it against the Rams? It might have been against the Rams that he made that. Yeah, that great special teams tackle. So yeah, he's definitely making a big impact. And third, I'll say like Kinlaw. Kinlaw has, I think, been like the other big development. And I know the whole time that Kinlaw has been a Niner, it's like we've gotten pretty disappointed in what he's put out on the field, and mostly because he's been hurt. Like, that's been the biggest disappointment of anything, and that's what has limited him thus far. Now going into this off season, you can tell that he did everything in his power to move forward from, the injuries that he had in the past. He lost a lot of weight. You hear about these things and you're like, that's great and all, but we still need to see it in training camp. I think we saw it, and it's like, that's great and all, but like, let's see if he can stay healthy through 3 games. It's still early in a very long season, but so far he's been healthy and he looks as good as we've ever seen him. So, credit to Javon Kinlaw for what he's doing out there. I think it's added like a nice little boost to that defensive line that, they didn't really have before.
Yeah, that's great. Great, all three great points. I also had Brock Purdy, but for the reasoning that there was so many questions coming into the season, whether, how he was going to be after the injury, physically, mentally, like a lot of players, like, they come back and are physically fine, but there's a mental hurdle that some never get over, like we've seen players come back from injury and they're never the same again, and we didn't know how Brock was going to be, even though we saw him in the preseason, but it was such like, he had like, a handful of reps. So, and they're not going, as hard, and they're third string, second string, it's just different, right, in the preseason. So, he comes back, he's, the same old Brock. And, another thing is that, I always say he's like cool as a cucumber,
Yeah.
and no matter what you throw, the teams are throwing at him. We saw the Giants, they blitzed more than any team since 19, whatever the heck, and you see, in the first quarter, he was, missing throws. He was kind of off a little, but you saw it was like he figured things out, and it didn't bother him, even in the first quarter when he was missing stuff and had guys, rushing down his face, and he's not back there with happy feet. He's not, you don't see him making just stupid decisions because, like all that stuff's going on. Like he's just still Brock, and I think like that's so important because we've seen a quarterback so often with happy feet and, just not being able to read the defense, not being able to go where the ball needs to go. Like he's seriously like another, like in Kyle Shanahan's head out there, it's like, I think that's what Kyle's been looking for, is that quarterback that he can say, go here with the ball. This, if you go here, this guy's going to be open. This is what you need to do. Just trust me, and we had quarterbacks, it seemed that they couldn't figure out just to go there where Kyle's telling him. They just wanted to go here. They're running, they're doing all this other stuff. And now Kyle has his guy. You mentioned that, Kyle has trust in him. And I think that's so huge. And in the pressers, even Kyle's there complimenting, saying, oh yeah, Brock did a great job. He missed some throws, but he figured it out. He did great. Blah, blah. Like we never heard him talk about a quarterback like that before. Like it was so hard to get compliments from him. It's like they would ask him question about previous quarterbacks. And it was like, he would never compliment, never say, it was like, he would never even say something nice, and it's like completely changed with Brock. And I love that because that's like, you see the whole Mike McDaniel and Tua thing. Like he went there and instilled this confidence into Tua just because he believed in him, just because he told him like, look, I believe in you and this is why, and I think that relationship is so important. And so I'm glad that Kyle's like finally all bought in and, has his guy. Another thing is that the offense is, so like the last few years, it was like the offense couldn't carry the weight. It was the defense, so often had to bail the offense out, had to, be making all these crazy plays for us to win games. It was always the defense. And I finally feel like the offense has caught up to the defense and is able to finally carry their own weight. We have all these playmakers. Obviously, CMC is so crazy, right? Oh my God, that guy is so good. But so obviously that doesn't hurt. And it's like 30 points all 3 games, like they're able to finally put up points. The offense is rolling, the quarterback's able to get the ball to the playmakers and just let them make plays, and it's working so far. And So, the defense is great. The offense is finally able to carry their own weight and is looking great so far. And with those both being great, that the special teams is only going to be better because those last, so many players that you keep to be on special teams, they're getting better because the roster is getting better. So all three phases are finally looking so good right now. I really hope that they can keep it rolling through the rest of the season. And then I guess the other one would be, that this team's able to make adjustments, and we've seen it on defense. There was a lot of questions like how Steve Wilkes was going to do, like meshing with the defense and, with the team, and he's calling plays from up in the booth, how that was going to work, his relationship with Fred, obviously having to talk and call the plays, and how Fred was going to be without D'Amico, that whole, situation. And, we've seen that the defense, like, they haven't given up really the big plays that, Steve Wilkes said that was going to be an area that he was, wanted to take care of. We've seen the defense out there. It looks like, they're keeping everything in front of them. They're not giving up the big plays. He's made adjustments. The Rams game, it was like the first half was kind of, and it was like they came back from halftime and the defense, tightened up. They knew what was going on. They didn't, they were good at. And, this last game against the Giants, it was like the first quarter, offense and defense was kind of figuring things out. And it was like you saw, looked like Wilkes made some more adjustments, in game, halftime, whatnot. They come back, the defense is looking good. So, I think it's awesome that, he's been able to take over that spot and kind of mesh right in and find his spot, and the defense is still rolling. So, yeah, I guess that would be my three.
Yeah, those are good.
Well, I guess we talk about all this great stuff that's going on with the 49ers, but no team's perfect, right? So after 3 games, what do you think, is an area that the 49ers might need to, tighten up on, need to improve, whatnot?
Yeah, for me, I definitely want to see the penalties improve over time. They're currently 26th in penalties, and they're averaging 7.7 penalties a game. Compared to last year, they averaged 5.6, right? So, right now they're making sillier mistakes than they usually do, especially, on special teams. They've gotten called for a number of penalties that help your opponent get good field position, right? So I don't think it hasn't hurt them yet or the outcome of the game really, but at some point it might. So before it gets to that point, I would like them to clean that up, and I think they will. And another thing, I think, and I do understand that the right side of the offensive line, they're still, I think, getting that those reps with each other. Colton
Mhm.
McKivitz is, first year starter. Spencer Burford, while he has started before, I think, last year he kind of had, Mike McGlinchey on his side, who was a veteran. And so I think both of those guys really just need to figure each other out and get more comfortable playing with each other, and they'll gel over time. But right now it's shaky, right? That right side of the line. And so that's definitely something I can stand to see improve. Spencer Burford, for example, has allowed 11 pressures, 10 hurries, and a sack
Mhm.
in 3 games. They've had tough matchups, right? Like they've had some really tough matchups. I will give that to them. But you're going to have other tough matchups down the stretch too. You think about playoff teams that you may face. I know it's week 3 or we're in week 4 now, but it's never too early to start looking at improving that, right? So I
Mhm.
think trying to get Burford and McKivitz on the same page more often than not, that'd be great. I also noticed there was a lot of low snaps for uh Jake Brendel on
Mhm.
Thursday night against the Giants. And, when you're facing the blitz and you got to get the ball out quickly, little things like that don't exactly help. But I another reason to be impressed with Brock Purdy, right? But to me, those are maybe one of the two biggest things that I want to see improve. But also, I'll just throw it out there, like the finishing in the red zone, right? Like I think that's another huge part for this team because currently, like they are leaving some points out on the field, and we talk about how this team is putting up 30 points. They're 3-0, and yet they could probably be winning by way more, right? It's crazy. Um, at some point, they're gonna need those points in order
Yeah.
to win a game. So yeah, hopefully they can get that kind of situated, but I think they will, honestly.
Yeah, I agree on all those. I guess I would just throw out there the running game, just get the other running backs involved, a little bit more. We saw, Elijah Mitchell get some run this last game, but he just doesn't look like Elijah Mitchell of old to me, whether he's not back, fully from the injury or he just needed some, to get some games back, to get some runs back under his belt. I don't know. He just doesn't look like I felt like you gave the ball to Elijah Mitchell and he was like so good, and it just, I don't know. He just felt like lackluster to me this last game. So whether that's getting Mason involved more, I'm sure that TDP is probably, he's been inactive all these games. He's probably in the doghouse because he blocked like crap during the preseason. So no block, no rock, So and you're not going to have, 4 active running backs, right, during game day, but, he could overtake Mason, if he was able to play special teams well and would actually block, but, whoever it is, get the running backs more involved so that we're not seeing CMC break down early in the season and not be there, for the long haul when we really need him. I don't want to have to go through the playoffs, through a Super Bowl run and not have, our best weapon. So yeah, to get some of that weight, put it on those other running backs. If we're, I know Kyle gets scared pulling starters because, of what happened before, doesn't want the lead, to lose the lead or whatnot. But it's like, be smart about it. Don't pull every single starter that we have. Don't pull every guy on defense and expect all the backups to be able to stop the team. It's like, but pull CMC, Kittle, like the guys that get, beat up more than usual, that play so physical, and, take some of that wear and tear off of them and put it onto the younger guys, when we're able to. So I guess that would be the one thing I would throw out there. Let's talk about those. You brought up Debo earlier, and I guess kind of the injury concerns. They mentioned that Greenlaw was back in practice today. Trent Williams is back after a rest day, vet day yesterday. Ayuk is back and out of a no contact jersey, so that's great news. But they said that Debo and Jawan Jennings both did not practice. So what is your level of concern with that? Do you think, it's best, like how they held out Brandon Ayuk last, game, if BA is able to go this week, then hold out Debo. But the fact that Debo and Jawan Jennings both aren't practicing, that's kind of scary to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, this offense is loaded, so I do still think they should be able to beat the Cardinals without both of those guys, but it isn't ideal, right? And you don't really want to put yourself in that situation of let's see if we could. I would feel a lot more comfortable if at least one of those guys was active, preferably Debo, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we saw from Ronnie Bell last week was a pretty strong performance, enough that I would feel good enough having him back out there and taking on a larger role. I also feel like with Brandon Ayuk being back and the Cardinals playing man a good percentage of the time, like I think that should bode well for Brandon Ayuk, and he should get some pretty good matchups in this one. But you have other guys on this team as well who should be able to step up. And I'm looking at George Kittle and I'm looking at Christian McCaffrey, who can, also line up as a receiver. And that's kind of like the the positive of having a weapon like McCaffrey on this team. If a guy's out, I mean, I think he can step in and take on that load for sure. So and then maybe in that case you play a little more Elijah Mitchell as running back, right? I don't know, but yeah, I mean it's certainly not ideal, but if at least one of those guys can play in this game, I think I would feel a lot better.
Yeah, and with Debo too, we knew that in the game, it was his ribs, and then it comes
Yeah.
out, after or the next day or whatnot that he's on the injury report with his knee, and they asked Kyle about it during his presser, and Kyle said they didn't know about it during the game. After the game, he said it was kind of one of those things that Debo woke up the next day, had pain, and let him know then. So I don't know. If it was just the ribs, I'd think, okay, yeah, Debo could play through it. We saw him come back into the game and play through it, right? But with it being a knee too, that's kind of scary because who knows? They're not telling us what it is. It's just a knee, right? You have no idea whether it's what the hell's going on with it. So I think it would just be safer to have him sit out this week, especially like you said, we saw Bell. Like, I think, real quick on him, like I had mentioned last night, like I feel like he fits so seamlessly into this 49ers offense. Like it's crazy how well he fits. And I feel like Kyle found who he thought Dante Pettis was going to be in Ronnie Bell. Dante Pettis ended up being a cat, but Ronnie Bell is actually really a dog, so he fits
that's a bar. That's a bar, Miriah.
He fits in this kennel well, so yeah, I love what we're seeing so far from Ronnie Bell. Not only did you see him get the touchdown this last week, but he was in there blocking his ass off too, on plays. So yeah, like I think he's awesome. And what we drafted him in the 7th round, 5th round, somewhere late 7th. Yeah,
7th.
So that's crazy.
Exactly. Well, and we were just talking about like the draft and like, hey, they hit on some of these guys. So yes, they've missed on some guys. That happens at every GM, by the way. But yeah, they've hit on other guys. So you get a guy like Ronnie Bell and he's able to contribute like in one of his first games. Like, yeah, give me that all day. I do expect that we do see an expanded role for Ronnie Bell in this one. And that's why you need depth, right? That's why you need these guys to step up. If someone is hurt, like, you have other guys you can lean to. So it's early in the season. So if it's something serious enough to keep him out in this game, yeah, keep Debo out. Because as Technic Sheik said in the comments here, like, we need him for that Cowboys game because Debo puts together some, pretty great games against the Cowboys. And I would rather have him out there for that one.
Yeah, I agree. Hold on 1 second. Thank you.
She had to get her Starbucks.
Yeah. So let's go talk about this Cardinals game a little bit. We saw the Cardinals beat the Cowboys this last week, which was kind of crazy. Not a lot of people were expecting that. But I think this Cardinals team, before the season, we were, a lot, not just we, but a lot of people, the national media, everybody thought this Cardinal team was going to suck, right? Like, that they'd be getting the first, second pick. They were going to be last in the division. And, even though they're 1-2, we've seen a team come out and actually stay in the fight. They're out there fighting. They have the backup quarterback, Dobbs. He's, doing enough to keep them, in games. Their running game's on point. James Conner's looking like, James Conner, like he's running great. So I guess like how you feeling about this Cardinals game? Because, a lot of people had it like penciled in before they beat the Cowboys that, this could be a game that the 49ers lose, like one of those, games like we've seen happen before with the 49ers that they got beat by, the Falcons, the Bears, whatnot. But I think after seeing the Cardinals come out and beat the Cowboys this past week, like I highly doubt that we see a 49ers team show up that's not fully ready for this Cardinals team. Like I'm expecting the 49ers team to show up. They've had extra rest, time to rehab, recover, whatnot. And I'm expecting them to be, on point and ready for this game. How you
Yeah,
feeling?
I agree. I mean, I think, I was kind of monitoring the other NFC West teams from like the beginning of the season, just to get a temperature check on how they were looking. And, the Cardinals came out of the gate and they looked good. They're like on paper, you look at them and you're like, especially on defense, right? I think that's the biggest thing. On offense, they got guys, but you look at who their quarterback was, at least to start the season, you're like, they're not dangerous. They're not going to do anything. But I think what we've seen is they're playing way above what they look like on paper. Right. And I think, credit to Jonathan Gannon. He hasn't playing hard, and they've been in contention in all of those games that they've been in. Really, Kyle said it yesterday. He said that they're a team that should be 3-0. Maybe he's being a little nice. I think you could say like they're a team that very easily could have been 3-0. And
Yeah.
that's true. They were playing hard in all of the games they were in, and I think what we saw in that Cowboys game was really just accumulation of what they had been building the previous two games, and they wanted it. They clearly wanted it more than the Cowboys did, and I think like the Cowboys were probably a little blindsided by the Cardinals playing as good as they did, right? And I think you make a great point, and I've also been echoing this sentiment like all week. It was for more reasons than one. It was great that the Cardinals beat the Cowboys, right? Like obviously it's the Cowboys, so forget them. But also there's no excuse for the 49ers to look at this game now and act like they didn't know that the Cardinals could be capable of beating them too, just because of what we saw them do against the Cowboys, right? So I think that helps them be better prepared. And you mentioned it too. They have the longer rest. They're going to be at home. So I do actually feel like that plays into the 49ers' favor. Now, it's still going to be a challenge. And I think particularly on offense, because they got guys, and Joshua Dobbs is playing so freaking well right now. He's playing really well, and James Conner is effective running the football. They were blocking their butts off against the Cowboys, but what also helped is they got this little zone read going on that is able to basically freeze defenders for however long, milliseconds in football is a really long time. Like so any time that you can make a defense hesitate, that gives you an advantage. And that's pretty much what the Cardinals are doing, running the football, and Dobbs can run the football. They got Rondell Moore lining up in the backfield as well. He is fast. So all of these things are something the 49ers have to be, careful with, and they got to be disciplined when playing against this. And it's tricky, right? Like, I don't even know if we can say the 49ers got a taste of it playing against the Giants, because I feel like normally they would have, but they didn't have Saquon Barkley, and it didn't look like Daniel Jones was even really trying to run. Like, they didn't even attempt it really. So in that, they kept them in check, like as far as scrambles and all that stuff goes. But aside from that, like I don't even know if the Giants game really prepared them for what they're about to face. So I think the 49ers defense is capable of doing it, just because they're good at all levels of their defense, but it's gonna require them to play, disciplined football. And so I think that's going to test this defense and Steve Wilkes early. But at the end of the day, I think they could do it.
Yeah, you mentioned Moore in this Cowboys game. He had 3 rushes for 54 yards and a touchdown. That's crazy. Connor was 14 for 98 and a touchdown. So he was averaging 7 yards a carry.
Telling you.
And then Josh Dobbs, he just did enough and took care of the ball. He was, he was 17 for 21 189 yards and 1 touchdown, but he's not turning the ball over. He's, handing it off, letting his guys run. And he had carries as well, 6 rushes for 55 yards. So, yeah, like you said, it's going to be very important for this defense to be on their P's and Q's. And we know in the past, right, that's been the one weakness is the 49ers can't stop running quarterbacks. So they hopefully, with the additions to the defense, they're able to stop that. Let's pretend, that we're future tellers and Debo and Jennings aren't going to be available for this game. So looking at the game, with the weapons that we'll have, what I guess do you see that we should be taking advantage of in this game? And sorry, my eyes like burning, so I don't know what the hell's going on.
No, that's funny enough. That's happened to me once in a show. It might have been with you, or like I might have been with someone else. But like one of my eyes will randomly just start burning and it'll water up, and I'm like, "What
Yeah,
is
I'm
going
like, what is
on?" It
going
looks like
on?
I'm crying. I swear I'm
Yeah.
not crying. But anyway, okay, let's just think that Debo would be out, and I talked about some of the guys who could step up in this game, like Ayuk, Kittle, CMC. Funny enough, both Ayuk and Kittle have each had like 2 touchdown games against the Cardinals last season. So both of those guys, I think, are capable of blowing up. It's a slightly different defense that you're playing this year because Gannon is, he's a defensive-minded coach, and he's brought what the Eagles were doing to the Cardinals. But still, those guys are capable of blowing up in this game, I think. And then, of course, CMC. And that's really what I'm looking at in this one, because I think the 49ers could and absolutely should be looking at running the football a large amount in this one, just because the Cardinals defense is 26th in rushing yards allowed per game. And as we know, even against like good defenses, like Steelers week 1, for example, even against good defenses, like CMC is still getting his, and he is still so hard to stop. Literally, like, defenses will plan their entire games around stopping Christian McCaffrey, and I don't blame them, because, like, what do we think when we talk about stopping any other offense? It's like, stop the run first, right? But it's always easier said than done when you're talking about Christian McCaffrey. And I'll just rattle off a few stats on McCaffrey now. He's averaging 5.9 yards per carry, 4.48 yards after contact. He has 9 runs of 10 plus yards. And one thing that Rob mentioned earlier in our stream this morning, he was saying, like, Cardinals are a bad tackling team. And guys across the board on this offense are guys who can make you pay. If you're not gonna wrap your arms around, if you're not gonna hit those tackles, hey, you could be a good tackler and they'll still make you look silly out there. And so maybe some of these guys on offense are going to do their best Debo impression, and they'll have guys missing too. Christian McCaffrey is certainly one of those guys who can make it happen. And let's not forget, Christian McCaffrey has the opportunity to break a couple of franchise records on this game on Sunday. One of them being like, the 13th consecutive game with a touchdown. That's on the line, right? In this game.
Against Jerry Rice, which is crazy.
To take over Jerry Rice for that one? No. Listen to this. But so both of the ones I'm going to mention are owned by Jerry Rice. So the other one is that he has at least in the first 3 games of the season, he has at least 100 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. Only other Niner that's done that is Jerry Rice. If Christian McCaffrey does it a 4th game in this game, he would be the only Niner to have done that. And so again, like two records, he can overtake Jerry Rice in the same game, right? Like it's pretty incredible to think about. But credit to Jerry too, because that's kind of hard to do, I think, for a wide receiver. So that's impressive on his part as well. But yeah, I think everything's kind of coming together for Christian McCaffrey to have a massive game, and I think it should be well within the game plan to run the football, dominate time of possession, keep the ball out of their hands.
Yeah, to think that CMC, you know, like you said, is going up against, you know, Jerry for those things, and he hasn't even been on the team a full year yet. You know, like if you count his
Exactly.
games, you know, like it hasn't even equaled a full season yet, and he's already, you know, can take over these things that have been withstanding for so long since Jerry Rice, years and years and years, you know. Nobody else has been able to do it, and yet this guy comes and able to just take over things so quickly. He's also, I saw today, I don't think that you had mentioned this one, leading, he's tied for, they both have 16, him and Zach Moss, for the most missed tackles forced on runs this season so far. So yeah, like teams aren't able to bring him down. He's like so elusive. Like he just, you know, you see him there just like juking guys, you know, that stiff arm's friggin'
Yeah,
crazy. Like I
he's
love that.
bringing out the
Yeah.
stiff arm, man.
Yep.
It's crazy. That's what I'm saying. He's gonna do his best Debo impression, I think, in this game. That'll earn him some extra yards.
Real quick, Beto, what's up, Beto? Niners Sickness had says, do you think the NFL's disrespecting the Cards by making them 14-point underdogs? What are your thoughts on this?
I don't really like pay attention to those things or like the spread and all that. Like I don't care about betting as much, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know how much players really pay attention to that stuff either. Um I mean, maybe, you know,
Yeah.
they could be, but at the same time, like you have to look at who they're playing. Like the 49ers have scored 30 points in each of their games. Like how many points realistically do we see the Cardinals scoring against this defense?
Yeah.
I mean, they've held their opponents to, I'm going to look it up really quickly cuz now I'm curious, but I want to say like they total defense, scoring defense. Hold on. Yeah, they're fifth in the NFL, allowing an average of 14 points per game. So actually, like that's
Yeah.
kind of about like
Mm-hmm.
where we're at, right? Like we'll probably talk about score predictions in a bit
Yeah.
here, and I'm, I'm kind of right there with the prediction of like 14 points. So maybe I don't know if it's so much like disrespecting them. Is it just being the matter of the situation?
Yeah, I think that is and like, you know, just being in Vegas, obviously, you know, and having worked at the casino and seeing the betting lines, like that is a pretty big, you know, point difference there. You know, most, you know, it's usually like 7.5, you know, 6.5. You know, 10 is usually a lot. So, you know, to have 14, you know, to think that the 49ers are just going to blow them out by at least 2 touchdowns, you know. But like you said, that's exactly how much the difference is, you know. So if the defense can do their part and hold them to 14 points and, you know, the 49ers keep on trucking at least 30 points, yeah, we're looking pretty good there. So before we get into score predictions and get out of here, I guess the last thing, you know, about them, is there any area in this game that, you know, like the least that you're least confident in, that you think that the 49ers might run into a problem with?
I mean, really, the only thing would be the zone read stuff. Like if they struggle with that, or if the Cardinals are having success with that, it can kind of blow up the game because then they can start having success in other areas. Like it'll just open up like opportunities for them to, hit explosives downfield or things like that. Like so, I think obviously first and foremost they have to stop the run because the trickle down effect would then favor the defense. If you start allowing them to get comfortable running the football, the trickle down effect goes the other way, and you're now giving them more opportunity to make other things successful. So they need to stop the run, and not just James Conner, Joshua
Mm-hmm.
Dobbs, Rondell Moore.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, right? But I think they can get it done in this one.
Yeah, that would be my thing as well, is, you know, stopping Connor and, you know, like you said, more obviously, like I mentioned earlier, the 49ers having trouble with running quarterbacks in the past. So, I mean, even if they start taking care of running quarterbacks, I feel like that's going to be something that still scares me just because I'm like scarred from these last seasons. Like you have the top defense and yet they still can't control running quarterbacks, So, yeah, so I'm with you on that. Let's go score predictions. What you got for me?
I think they'll be slightly better, them being, the 49ers. I think they'll be slightly better in the red zone this time around. And so I'm going to give them a little more than 30 points. I'm going to say 34. And I'll also, I do think that the Cardinals are going to be able to move the ball at some points in this game, maybe early in the game, as the 49ers kind of try to like feel them out a little bit and figure out what's going on, what they need to do on defense. So I say 34. Bryant just took my like prediction actually earlier because I did it earlier. I think it was like 34, like 16, I think is what I said earlier. So really close. 34-16 is what I'm gonna say.
That's good. The one I've been going with is 31-13. So okay. I'm sticking with that.
Wasn't
for
that
reason,
wasn't that ours
points.
Last week?
Yeah. And I feel like okay, if they give up, one touchdown, okay, couple field goals, so that's how I figure it. Yeah. I don't see, the defense giving up more than one touchdown pretty much to any of these teams. Maybe if we were to face, I don't think we don't even play them this season, but like a team like Kansas City, then I'm gonna be putting the score different. But these little teams, nah, I don't think they're gonna be running it up.
All right.
So I guess real quick, chat, we appreciate you. Steph, do you have anything else coming up that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I'm gonna be on the with Al Sacco and Brian Rennick on 49ers Webstone podcast, the No Huddle podcast. So that'll be on after this. I don't know if it's gonna be live, but in any case, like look out for that. Because it's literally, at the top of the hour, we're gonna record that. And tomorrow I'm going to be doing my game preview with Lori Fitzpatrick on my channel. So that one, we do a little like deeper dive into like favorable matchups and things like that. And we really look into like what the Cardinals are doing defensively and offensively. So tune into that. But other than that, like I'm ready for game day.
Yeah, me too. Alberto, real quick, he says 42-10, and Moody hits a 60-yarder. Moody been, man, Moody's been
that's crazy.
Moody's been on the money. He's keeping up that name, Money Moody. I'm so happy for him just because the offseason, like the preseason that he had and getting hurt, and for him to just be nailing every single kick that he freaking makes, when it's counted, it's been awesome. So yeah, Moody season, I agree. But yeah, we're getting out of here. We appreciate you all. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend coming up. A good day, a game day. Everybody be safe. Hopefully next time we see you, the 49ers are 4-0. And let's hope that we're the only team left undefeated soon. But yeah, fam, we appreciate you. We're out of here. Everybody take care.
Peace.